that we can together learn something, explore another week in this weird, new, unfamiliar world. And the topic that I want to address today is travel. What do I mean by travel? One of the things that's been taken away from us during COVID has been travel. And many people have felt that it's taken away an opportunity from them. It's taken away a privilege. It's taken away something that they're used to. So some people are still traveling locally, going to various places, but on the most part, travel has become a bit, how can I say it? Travel has become a bit obsolete. Whoever deals in the hospitality industry and cannot supplement, their hospitality by just going on Zoom, they're struggling. It's a real struggle right now to be able to host. Now, why do many people like traveling, besides the fact that they have money and they don't know how to spend it? Just kidding. People like traveling because they like seeing new places, allowing the energy of various places to relax them. So some people love the beach. Some people love the bush, and they'll sit in nature and let nature give them whatever energy it has. Let the ocean give them whatever energy it has. Some people love travel overseas. They'll go to Europe, they'll go to Asia, they'll go to the Far East, they'll go to South America, they'll go to the United States, and taking in lots of stuff. And as somebody who's done a little travel, not too much, but I've done my fair share, I see the absolute virtue in it. There's no question. You walk down the streets of Italy, you feel something very different. You walk the streets of Johannesburg. And if you walk down the streets of Tel Aviv, it's very different than the streets of Jerusalem. Each place has its energy. Some of it is useful energy, some of it you might say is useless energy, but they all have an energy and they add value in our lives. But now there's no travel. That's one of the things that we can't do. Interesting, we're also now in the 3 weeks of mourning. And the custom is during the 3 weeks of mourning, specifically in the 9 days, which starts tomorrow night, but in general, to minimize travel. It's not a time for travel, homebound. Unfortunately, we haven't had this for 3 months. For 3 weeks, we've had this longer than 3 months. But I was thinking before the share, I was thinking to myself, what's been taken away? We've spoken about so many different elements that have been taken away and so many things that have been brought in. But one of the things is that an opportunity to go see the world. You could see the world through TV, but pretty much you're seeing the world from your little home, wherever you're living at, in Joburg, in Cape Town, etc. You're sitting in your home and you're seeing the world from that prism. So are we losing out? Are we losing out in the fact that we can't travel? And the simple answer is yes. Of course we're losing out. We're losing out by the mere fact that we cannot be in places that we usually would be at this time of the year. So we're losing out. Fine. But if you know, we've been speaking about this for quite a while already, that everything that's been taken away from us in this period, something else has been given to us instead. It might not be as good, but there's something there. If shul was taken away from us, learning was given to us. There's no question that more people are learning now than ever before. If community was taken from us, then interesting lectures and experiences that the community's never been having so much. Literally every night you have to choose between 2 or 3 quality lectures to go on to. If money's been taken away from us, family's been given to us, etc., 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 each one in their own life. But the opposite of travel is traveling inward. The opposite of traveling out is traveling in. Many of us have traveled enough to pick up various energies from various places. But sometimes we forget to ask the more important question. If somebody travels into my space, what energy are they picking up from me? In other words, you've walked the streets of Rome, you've walked the streets of Paris, you've walked the streets of Thailand, China, or wherever you've, Australia, Cape Town, little townships, little town areas. You've walked different places and you've allowed yourself to take the energy of various places. But what about our own energy? What about me? When somebody spends time with me, what energy do they walk out with? In other words, if somebody travels into my orbit, into my universe, what do they walk out with? I believe very strongly, I don't believe it, I know it to be true, that we put out an energy. There's no question about it. Happy people put on happy energy. Unhappy people put out an unhappy energy. Secure people put on a secure energy. Insecure people put on an insecure energy. There's no question about it. Most people are not able to articulate what they're picking up, but you could pick it up in a second. Chances are, as I speak to you right now, you're picking up an energy. I'm not even sure what the energy is. I'm trying to figure out myself where my energy is today. But there's an energy that's coming forth. It might be positive, might be not positive, might be a mixed bag. But we're constantly oozing an energy. But all too often, we don't know what that energy is. We don't know what we're putting out. We don't know ourselves. That's the straight out fact. We know a lot more about the world than we know about our world. We know a lot more about what goes out there, the news cycle, than we know about our own cycle, our own emotions, our own experiences, our own idiosyncrasies. If you saw yourself as a universe, and we've spoken about this before, but if you seen yourself as a universe, how much of your universe do you know compared to how much of the outside world do you know? I was talking to somebody earlier today, and she was giving me very wise advice. And I remember seeing it, I actually saw it somewhere last night as well on YouTube. So maybe it's twice in the same day. I saw the same thing, so it hit me. There's too many people out there trying to change the world and too few people out there trying to change themselves. There's too many people who want to transform others, but too few people who want to transform themselves. And the problem is when I change the world and I haven't changed myself first, I won't make the world a better place. I'll destroy the world because I can only give the world what I have. And if I haven't healed myself, if I haven't made myself a better person, then I cannot make this place, this world, a much better place. I'm not saying I have to be perfect, but I have to do a lot of work on myself before I could go out there and think that I could change. And not only to change the world, even as parents. I believe almost everybody, if not everybody over here, are parents. There's no question that the single biggest gift I could give my children and my grandchildren is working on myself. I can only influence them if I influence myself. If I am insecure, my insecurity will ooze through the entire house. If I am paranoid, my paranoia will infiltrate every part of the house. If I have apathy, if I am not passionate about life, that will break down throughout the whole house. There's no question about it. Yes, sometimes you see real, not great parents who have great kids and great parents who have non-great kids. It does happen. But on the most part, parenting very much is us giving ourselves in a home environment and the kids picking up who we are and adapting it in their own way to go out into the world and make their impact on the world in that way. And for me, the hardest thing about parenting has been to realize that I have to work on myself much harder now that I've become a parent than until now. Till then, I thought as a teenager, you have to work on your character. In your younger 20s, you have to work on your character. You have to become a man, become an adult. And at some stage, you start going on cruise control and the kids just fit in. But every single day, I feel like my children are challenging me, new. They're not saying it, but it's a scream out to me. Ultimately, I have to be the person I want them to be. I have to be the person, at least value systems. I have to be the values I want them to have. I can't just pray for them to have values that I am struggling to put into myself. I have to have them. And I've seen the same thing even as a rabbi. There's no question that in my journey, in my own journey as an individual, I've seen its impact on a much broader scale. When I'm in a good headspace and then my shiurim are in a good headspace and then my energy is in a good headspace, it trickles down. And vice versa, vice versa. There's no question about it. And ultimately, we all put out something into the world. And not too often do we ask ourselves, what do we put out? Sometimes I did a funeral for somebody recently who put out an incredible energy to the world, but not necessarily were they aware how incredible their energy was. In other words, they felt their energy was much worse than it actually was. And sometimes we think our energy is much better than it is, and actually it's much less. And one of the most humbling things is to actually ask, a spouse or children, said the same, when I walk into the room, 9 out of 10 times, what energy do I bring in with me? Does the room become tense? Does the room become calm? Does the room become accepting? Does it become judgmental? Does it become petty? Does it become sophisticated? What happens to the space? You know this. Every person, you sit down with two friends for a cup of coffee. When that's going to happen, please God. Those two friends, if you exchange them with two very different people, it's an entirely different energy. I know based on the friends I have, when they call me or I call them, I could predict 80% of the phone call based on their energies. I can know like what we're going to talk about. This person's going to gripe about his wife, and this person's going to gripe about his shul, and this person's going to, celebrate that life is fantastic and nothing could be any better. And this person's going to sit there, being cynical, etc. Each person has their energy. What energy am I putting out? Because ultimately, my whole universe right now is 118 trillion. That's my entire globe. That's my South Africa, that's my Australia, that's my Israel, that's my America, that's my Canada. Everything happens in the 400, 500 square meters of my gated complex. That's my universe. Once in a while, I get to drive out for 5 minutes, but my universe is here. And what kind of world am I building? Think about it. A lot of people are saying, gosh, the world is mad. Look at the politics and the dynamics, and look at what's going on to our world and the racism and anti-Semitism, etc. True, the world is a mess. Your world, how organized is your world? Your little house and your garden, your little universe, your 300, 400, 500 square, 1,000 square meters of space that you own. How's that world doing? Is there any xenophobia there? Any racism? Is there inner peace? Is there chaos? Is there blame? Is there shame? Is there forgiveness? Is there generosity? Is there empathy? What's in your universe? Let's stop fixing the world. Now that we're all locked in the home for months and months and months, and unfortunately it looks like a few more months, when you're locked in your own world, how well is your world doing? 1 to 10, how well is your universe doing? Some of us might say it's doing great, Baruch Hashem. But for some of us, it's not doing great. We can't give it more than 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, if we're lucky. In other words, the world's not, our little world is not doing much better than the outer world. So can we stop bickering about the outer world and actually look at our inner world? How's my marriage? How's my relationship with my children? How's my relationship with my domestic? How is the energy in the home? How are the conversations at the home? Are they ones of peace? Are they argumentative? Is it an environment that builds me up and the people around me, or is it an environment that smashes down? Is the environment where people feel free to express their emotions but with respect, or people feel free to express their emotions without respect, or they don't feel free to express their emotion, period? What is your universe doing? If you were God and you had to now give rating to your world, your inner world and your home, how would you rate it? Could you imagine if millions and billions of people stop trying to save the world and they start saving their own home? 90% of our issues would be solved. Some people will say the worst thing that's happening right now is COVID. Some people will say the worst thing that's happening now is global warming. Some people might say the worst thing that's happening is the financial crisis. Some people might say it's racism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism. Some people might say that it's unnecessary suffering, radical politics, etc., etc., etc. For me, the greatest tragedy of our time, and it's not of 2020, it's of 2019, 2018, 2017, 2016, the last few decades, is the destruction of self-esteem and a family. The fact that the world's going mad is an outbreak. It's an outcome, rather, of broken homes, insecure homes, people who grow up with love and stability and peace don't go out and burn the world down. It's not me saying it, it's facts, statistics. Kids without fathers have a 20 times more percent chance to end up in prison, etc., etc., etc. For me, what we're witnessing now, and I'm not talking about COVID, I'm just witnessing the pathetic politics, the extreme opinions on social media, the fear, the paranoia that so many of us feel. Ultimately, it's our own inner health that's suffering, and it's just manifesting in this. Our homes are broken, and therefore the world is broken. Our self-esteem and inner security is broken, and therefore the world is broken. And the way to solve it is not by fixing the world, because if broken people try to fix a world, they just break it more. Hurt people hurt people. Broken people break more. Build your own home. Build your own temple. I'll give you an example of the times that we're living in now, the 3 weeks. We mourn the fact that 1950 years ago exactly, the temple was destroyed, and a few hundred years before that, the first temple was destroyed. Once upon a time, there was one big temple everybody would come up to and service God and bring their sacrifices, blah, blah, blah. The world was perfect because you had a perfect place, a beautiful, magical place. Really? No, not at all. The temple times, both the first temple and the second temple, are some of the most corrupt, heartbreaking, eroded times of Jewish history, where we literally lost our way, lost our marbles, the things we've done. You can read it in the books of prophets and the second temple, or you can read it in the Talmud, the things that we did. There's no question that the most heartbreaking story I've ever heard about the Talmud, about the destruction of the temple, is this. I'll be honest, every time I think about it, I just get so angry. The story goes that there was a certain individual who desired somebody else's wife. And he tried to figure out a scheme how to get this woman. So he walks over to the husband or the wife and he says, I hear your wife is having an affair. So he says, oh gosh, I better divorce her, but I can't afford to pay for a ketubah, for the dowry, or for the payment I committed if I divorce her. So he says, don't worry, I'll lend you the money. So he lends him the money. This guy divorces his wife. How's he going to pay back the money? He says, you're going to come be a servant in my house. Right after he divorces his wife, the other guy marries this woman. And this first husband now has to serve in that house. And the Talmud says, as he's serving his former wife and this absolute evil self-brat, his tears filled up the cup that he was serving. And at that moment, God decided to destroy the temple. If somebody could be that evil, that conniving, then the temple's destroyed. That's the kind of corruption that unfortunately happened at the time. That's one example, but for me, the most heartfelt example. I could talk about hundreds of thousands of people dying and civil war and etc. But that story for me gets me every time. Absolute evil to give the guy the money so that the guy can now serve you while you're sitting with his wife. Unreal. Gets me angry as I talk to you now. And you know what God decided after the temple was destroyed? He said, from now on, I'm not building them a temple, at least not to the Messianic age. Now you're going to build a temple in your own heart. Enough with one centralized power, enough with fixing the world. Everybody go. Get out of Israel. Until 70 years ago, 75 years ago, get out of Israel. Disperse yourself around the world. Build your synagogues, build your mikvahs, build your everything, but ultimately, you're going to be forced to figure it out on your own. And you're going to build a temple inside, and you're going to fix yourself inside, and you're going to make yourself better people. And then, when enough of you have made yourself into decent people, then I'll bring the big temple. But first, you got to build a temple inside. In other words, first fix yourself, and through that, the world will be fixed. It's very easy to look out there, follow the news, and see a bunch of angry people and sit there saying, gosh, this world's going mad. But my job never was to fix the world. Please God, maybe I can, but that's not my job. My job is to be Levi, to be the best Levi that can be, because if Levi's a good Levi, he has 6 kids at home that will be influenced through that. He has a wife, he has siblings, he has cousins, he has a community, he has neighbors, he has friends. He'll affect enough people. And every one of us is the exact same way. If we enrich ourselves, if we travel inward instead of only traveling outward, and today we have no choice but to travel inward, and we start exploring our world and finding the parts of our own world, the inner city of our heart, the parts of our place where there's a lot of violence, in your own universe, yeah, that part of your heart that's full of jealousy, temptation, anger, hurt, variables. We all have different parts. We have the beautiful parts, the magnificent streets of a European city, and we have the back end and the inner city and, broken and shattered, smashed communities. It's all inside our heart. We are the most complex beings on the planet, human beings. We have majesty and greatness, and we have pettiness and devastation, all within the same human being. And until I don't go inward and work on myself, work on my character, work on my essence, work on being a better person, nothing's going to change. I don't know if COVID was here to change the world. I know it was here to change me. I'm a changed person. Not changed enough, but changed. And so are you. You're also changed. It's here to change us as individuals, to reprioritize ourselves, to ground us. We were flying too high before this. Even the best of us were living very physical lives. Those of us who were involved in Judaism, and I'll talk for myself, I wasn't grounded. Definitely not as grounded as I am now. I never could have been. I don't think I could ever have achieved this groundedness that we've felt in the last few months, if not for this COVID. It's brought us back down, back to earth, back to ourselves. As I've said many times, right now, the billionaire and the schnorrer are not living that different. Schnorrer has a little less food on their table, but ultimately they're both locked up in their house. Their cars are barely getting used. Their vacation, the millionaire has a vacation home, is barely using it. The other person doesn't have a vacation home. The only difference is how much money's in the bank account. But on the most part, this has been what I call the great equalizer. It's just all brought us down straight to the core. And God's telling me, that's what I feel. I feel like God's coming and telling me, look inward. How beautiful is your world? Is it beautiful? Because I know you claim that you can make the world a better place and that you're so idealistic. But how's your world? How's your marriage? How's your parenting? How's your relationship with your kids? How's your relationship with your siblings? How's your relationship with yourself? What kind of thoughts do you have? Are you in control of your thoughts? Do you watch your words? Are you kind? When you're alone in your own little room and it's just you and God, what kind of person are you? I'm talking to myself. What are you then? The world is not so beautiful. There's work to be done. Well, doesn't mean I have to stop doing the work I do with the community, but ultimately I have more time on my hands right now. More time to focus inward. More time to build myself up. More time to fix my own temple. Recently, we're studying the mitzvah of the day, and many of you have joined the mitzvah, the Torah in a Year group. We spoke about various mitzvot: forgive, don't hold grudges. Maimonides starts his book with talking about God and then talking about decent character traits between two individuals, between human beings. Are we going to walk out nicer people? Are we going to walk out of what we're now nicer, sweeter, kinder? We have no other choice. In other words, otherwise, we've wasted an opportunity. God is calling upon me and God's calling upon you to go travel. Lech lecha. The first words God ever told a Jew, Abraham, Lech lecha, go, travel. But what did God say? God didn't say lech, travel. He said lech lecha, travel to you, travel inward. Yes, he told him to go to Israel, but before he tells him to go to Israel, the first words he says is lech lecha, go to you. Go inward, Abraham. You want to change the world? You want to be the father and your wife the mother of all the future generations? First, work on yourself. Lech lecha, go into yourself. Those are the first words God ever told us. The first words God ever told a human being, really, not the first words, because God, like when he created Adam and Eve, he told them, go be fruitful and multiply. But the first time God has a real conversation after Adam and Eve sinned with the tree of knowledge, what's the first word God says? Hayeka, where are you? Again, where are you? Not where's the world, where are you? What's up? Where are you? What space are you in? Lech lecha, go to yourself. The foundation of faith, before we're supposed to be a light unto the nations, before we're supposed to change the world, first and foremost, be yourself. Play your part. Live your life with the utmost integrity and generosity and warmth and empathy and forgiveness. That is our first and most important calling. Before anything else, before us being spouses, before us being parents, before us being children, before us being siblings, before anything, the first thing God wants us is for me and you to be the best people we can be. To heal our own broken parts. To be the rulers of our own mind. In other words, to tell our mind what to think. To control our thoughts. When there's negative thoughts, to push them out. To control our words. To control our deeds. To be in control of ourselves. I've shared this before, but one of the books I've read that made a big impact on me is Stalin's Daughter. And the reason it made an impact on me is because my family was very affected by Stalin. Stalin killed a lot of my relatives. And Stalin's daughter eventually left Russia and she went over to the United States, to the American side. Anyways, so it's a heartbreaking story, but one of the parts of the story that's always resonated with me very deeply is this idea that this madman, Stalin, who his wife committed suicide out of his madness. Hitler also, his girlfriend committed suicide out of madness. It was actually his niece, early 30s. These two people who couldn't get their own house in order destroyed the world, and collectively, between the two of them, killed 100 million people. Could you imagine if these two people just got their house in order, worked on their own nonsense, their own paranoia, their own psychosis? How many lives would be spared? Because that's ultimately what happens. Two madmen, Hitler and Stalin, two madmen. Forget about what they've done to millions of people, their own lives, their own parenting, their own relationships, their own relationship with their loved ones. Madmen destroyed the life and pretty much took the world for a ride for years. So I ask you a simple question. If the madmen who didn't solve their own problems can destroy the world, could you imagine the people who work on their character and ooze out positive energy, how much positivity they could do? There's a famous principle in Torah that says, Meruba mida schus al mida peranius, that the energy of positivity is greater than the energy of destruction. Most of us feel that it's easier to destroy than build. But the sages say otherwise. Meruba mida teva, a good character, good energy is more powerful than destructive energy. In other words, I can change the world if I work on myself, as much as they destroy the world. I could build the world as much as they destroy the world, if not more. 2020 was the year that God said the world needs healing, but he wasn't talking about the big world. He was talking about my world. Levi needs healing. I don't know why he did it for everybody else. That's for everybody else to answer. I'm not saying that people are suffering for me. I'm saying why Corona happened to me. Each of us is an entire universe, so I have to not ask why it happened to everybody else. I could, but first and foremost, I have to ask myself why it happened to me, why I'm living in this time and living through this. It's for me to fix my world. Because there were parts of the world, my own inner world, that needed fixing, that maybe the rat race of life did not allow me to focus on. And this has. And thank God for that. I wish us all tremendous mazel in discovering our universe, discovering what we need to fix, and traveling inward. Please God, one day we'll travel outward again. We'll be able to go travel around the world. But until then, until our borders open up, the most rewarding journey we can ever go on is the journey into ourselves. Wish us all luck.